Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to explain to me how the hell these movies keep getting better. What is up, guys, and welcome to my review of Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Probably the longest title of a movie we're going to see this year. And, you know, the Mission Impossible franchise has been one that I've been a fan of my entire life. I was a huge fan of the Mission Impossible N64 game, and then my dad eventually bought me the Brian De Palma movie. Not a single soul prepared me to see Gordon Bombay get face fucked by an elevator. I saw Mission Impossible 2 in theaters and loved that for a few years. And I've seen most of the rest of these films in theaters with my dad. I think Rogue Nation is actually the only one I haven't seen in theaters. And so, as most of us would agree, these movies have been one of the most consistently awesome action franchises and spy franchises in movie history. And we're also at a point now where over the past couple of years, after the closing of movie theaters and COVID and all that, that Tom Cruise has kind of cemented himself as the guy that makes the event film of the year. Absolutely cleaned house last year with Top Gun Maverick, and a lot of us expected him to do the exact same thing this year with Dead Reckoning. And I don't think it's hyperbolic to say that this has been one of the most soul-crushingly mediocre summer movie seasons that I have experienced in a very long time. And so many movies that I expected to be amazing and to be these huge box office behemoths have disappointed both in the quality of the film and absolutely disappointed with the box office numbers. And so yet again, we find ourselves in a place where it's like, can Tom Cruise save movies?
Tom Cruise used a witchcraft on me to get the fire off me!
But really quick before we dive into Dead Reckoning, while Tom Cruise is privileged enough to have access to like the blood of dragons or something to stay as youthful as he looks, us regular folk need some other options. So check out the sponsor of today's video, Geology. As I've gotten older, skincare has become a growing concern and much more of a focus in my everyday hygienic routine. And the company that has aided me the best with my skincare goals is absolutely Geology. Geology is a 23-time award-winning skin, hair, and body care company with over 7,000 five-star reviews. They create simple and effective skincare and hair care routines that are customized just for you. Their products are built around just a handful of powerful, proven ingredients that have been trusted by dermatologists for decades. Because at the end of the day, skincare is science and shouldn't feel like a gamble. Geology Skincare helps you fight acne, reduce oiliness, prevent wrinkles, combat dark and puffy under eyes, have smoother hydrated skin, and even target signs of aging. And now the best in the skincare game has expanded their reach into hair care and body care with co-washes, shampoos, conditioners, body washes, deodorants, and much more. My favorite of their newer products is absolutely their deodorants. I love the natural scents like this one that's bergamot and juniper, but especially like the fact that they don't leave those nasty white circles on the insides and outsides of my black t-shirts. But here recently I've been trying their shampoos and I've really enjoyed those as well. And I like the fact that the natural ingredients are listed right on the front for you to see. So click the link in the video description and take their 30-second diagnostic quiz. Tell them about your skin and your goals, and a team of dermatologists will design a personalized routine just for you that is shipped directly to your door. And right now, for a limited time, Geology is hooking you up with an insane offer. Use my code CODY70 or scan the QR code on the screen and they will give you an exclusive 70% off of their award-winning skincare trial set. That's $50 in products for only 15 bucks. On top of that, you can save big on the add-on products of your choice when you add it to your trial. This is one of the best offers that you're going to come across, so snatch it up before it's gone. Take charge of your skin, body, and hair today by using Geology. That's Geologie. And thank you to Geology for partnering with me on today's sponsorship. And starting off with the positives, I can absolutely confirm to you that this just continues the trend that this franchise has been on for the last number of years, where they just continue to try to find ways and mostly succeed with topping themselves, making the action sequences bigger and crazier. Tom Cruise doing something that's even more death-defying than the last thing that he did, giving us as audience members an experience that will never be recreated at home, no matter how good of a TV, how badass of a home theater system, and how comfortable of a chair that you have. The movie theater experience is something that is just sacred. And 2 for 2 now, Tom Cruise has delivered movies that remind us of that. This franchise has gone through quite a few different tonal changes throughout its lifetime, especially in the first half of the franchise, with the original film being much more of a tension-filled espionage thriller. You get the really over-the-top and stylistic action film in the second one, a little bit more grounded, down-to-earth family element in the third film, much more of a fun, extreme movie in the fourth film. And ever since Christopher McQuarrie came into this franchise as director with Rogue Nation, they have gone for having a nice balance of huge action scenes, big set pieces, a lot of really serious tension and some serious darkness in there that gives you the stakes that you want from whatever plot Ethan Hunt is trying to take down, while also having some really good humor sprinkled throughout without it being an overly comedic movie. And I would say that this film might have achieved the best balance yet of all of that. One of the reasons why I've said for a long time that the fourth film is actually my favorite, and we'll see if it continues to be that here in a couple of days, is that I feel like that one I have the most fun with. That one, the group dynamic, I have the most enjoyment with. There's also the huge action set pieces, and there's the huge Tom Cruise stunt with the building on the outside, and there's so many things that that movie got a nice balance with. And this one certainly rivals that, to where the tension especially is probably higher than it's ever been in this franchise. And they found a really good way of having an internal conflict, like a small-scale personal conflict that Ethan Hunt is trying to overcome in regards to something with his past, while also having this huge global conflict that he is trying to take down. And the movie's able to balance both of those and keep the tension high with both of those, to where you're invested in his personal stakes against this villain, and also you're invested in the world stakes about how all of us as humanity are going to make it out of this situation if Ethan Hunt fails. But at the same time, having a movie where the tension and the action set pieces are just ramped up to 11, there's some seriously good moments of humor here that I was not expecting. And so while I walked in knowing, just from the expectations that this franchise and Tom Cruise himself has already set and achieved with me as a movie viewer, that the action is definitely going to be top-notch, I was pleasantly surprised at how tension-filled and how on the edge of my seat I was with the story, and how many good, genuine laughs I got throughout the film without it ever undercutting the tension. And one of the best additions to this franchise in quite a while is the character of Grace, played by Hayley Atwell, and it's the relationship between her and Tom Cruise and the situational humor that they get into, with her being a thief and him being a spy and them having to kind of keep continuously screwing each other over, was one of the better elements that brought that much-needed lighthearted sense to such a dark storyline. And she is just awesome. She's been somebody I've wanted to see her do more. I really only know her from the movies she's been in the Marvel Universe, and she's great in that, but I could tell that she had the potential to do something great, have a great character or a great franchise of her own, and I think this is going to be the one that's really going to break her out, because as much as I love the character of Ethan Hunt and a lot of the returning characters of his team, like Benji and Luther, Hayley Atwell is the standout of this movie, and every scene that she's in, she pretty much steals, which is a tall order whenever you're working against the characters and the actors that have been portraying these characters for decades at this point. And as far as the story of this film that very much focuses on the threat of AI, I found the way that they framed the threat and the villains of this movie and the overall plot that they're trying to stop to not only be realistic and actually fairly relevant to a lot of things that are going on in real life today, but it really allowed for a nice change of pace in that hero and villain dynamic that we've seen so many different ways, to varying degrees of success. Varying degrees of sex.
Respect the cock.
Varying degrees of success in the Mission Impossible franchise. I mean, we've had some huge standouts like Philip Seymour Hoffman in the third film and Henry Cavill in Fallout. We've had some not so good examples, even in my favorite film, Ghost Protocol. The villain, couldn't really tell you anything about them, just bad guy trying to do bad things. And so while typically it's very simple of, that's a bad guy who has a terroristic plot that we have to stop, or there's an item that they want to get that we have to get first, or there might be some twists and turns along the way of who is actually on the good and the bad side, and there's certainly still some of that here in this movie. But having a nameless, faceless lead villain with unlimited reach and unprecedented capabilities led to a storyline where all throughout it, you never quite know, along with the characters, what is real and what is a setup. And at no point in the movie do you ever have this sense of security that the MI team is actually winning, or they're on the correct path, or they're starting to foil the plan of the villain. They keep this really nice question mark going to where you never quite know if what they're achieving in every single sequence is foiling the plan of the villain or a part of the plan of the villain. And within the story, they found some really good moments to kind of flesh out the lore, if you will, of the Impossible Mission Force and give some more context and answer some questions that probably a lot of us have had the entire franchise that we've never actually stopped and really boggled our mind over, as far as how this force actually works within the government, within the intelligence agencies, and how do people get recruited for it, how do they choose people, like all these different things that they've never really explored, even though we're, 7 movies in. And that was a nice little surprise, because it harkens back to events even in the first film and gives you a little bit of a different context to how these characters got to be where they are now. And so there's a nice little undercurrent in there talking specifically about individual character arcs with Ethan Hunt and Luther and Benji, and then eventually Haley Atwell's character, about like what it means to be a part of this team, why they continue to do it, what is most important to you, getting that clear divide of what separates human from AI. And while I've already kind of acknowledged it, of course, the action set pieces, the stunts, the action sequences, they're incredible. I mean, they've always been good in this franchise for the most part. And like I said, they continuously find ways to do action differently and to do something a little bit more crazy and death-defying, to where you marvel at the fact that that's a real person doing a real stunt. And something that I harped on so many times here recently when I was talking about the Indiana Jones franchise, it's refreshing to see modern action adventure movies that still stick to practical stunt work and practical effects. And of course there's CGI here, and you can tell whenever it's CGI and something real, but when it's real, it's so much more thrilling. And finally, one of the biggest praises that I can give to this movie, which was genuinely my biggest worry walking into it, is that this, of any recent film that I have seen that has tried to do this, is the best and most successful Part 1 story. We have had 3 movies just this summer alone, with Fast X, Across the Spider-Verse, and now Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, that are the first part of an incomplete story. And this is the only one that managed to leave me satisfied by the end of it, because they introduce this overall plot that certainly is not completely resolved by the end of it. You see where there's still conflicts to be resolved in the second half. You see some direction, some things that are still open to be explored in a second half. But for the most part, the overarching struggle, conflict that they're going after in this first part comes to a nice resolution. And there's a lot of nice character arc resolutions here too, to where even with Ethan Hunt, Haley Atwell's character, you get to the end of this film and that 2-hour, 45-minute journey completes what they were trying to explore with those characters. And so you walk out and you go, damn, I can't wait for part 2, but I can wait patiently, because that left me satisfied. And as much as I loved Across the Spider-Verse, not so much Fast X, but those 2 films left me absolutely cold, because they just choose a point to stop, and there's not really much of a resolution to the things that I've been exploring and experiencing for the past 2.5 hours, and I hated that experience. So I was really worried they were going to do that here, and they didn't. So if you have that feeling of worry that I did, which I imagine a lot of you did, you'll be satisfied. Moving on to the mixed aspects, the only one that I have is the runtime of this movie. Now, I will say this movie earns its runtime, and the pacing of the movie, especially with all the different action set pieces, it does not feel like a near 3-hour film. And it moves by at a nice little clip. There's a few moments here and there where it slows down a bit, but there's always some big badass set piece that's coming right around the corner that just gets you right back into it. And for that, I'm cool with this movie being a near 3-hour film, because they're telling such a big epic scale story. But I still have that fatigue of just blockbusters especially getting longer and longer and longer, and the vast majority of them not earning their runtime. And for me, the biggest casualty that comes with these movies with longer and more bloated runtimes nowadays is the rewatch factor, which plays very heavily into how I rate movies and how I continue to rank movies as far as their legacy in my fandom as time goes on. And so while I highly enjoyed this movie, and while I think that it absolutely earns its runtime for the most part, inevitably it's going to end up being one of the less rewatched films in this franchise, because there's not often going to be times where I'm sitting there casually wanting to watch a Mission Impossible film. I'm going, you know what? I've got 3 hours, fuck it. And now moving on to my negatives, of which I have very few, but there are some things worth noting. One thing that I will say that it's not necessarily a negative for my own experience, but it is something that I could imagine hearing people say, and I would kind of understand where they're coming from, because this franchise has been so consistent for so long with massive stunts and death-defying things that Tom Cruise has done, and having a very consistent type of plot in all of them. I could see somebody walking into this and starting to experience maybe a law of diminishing returns, because they have had such extreme experiences with some of the previous films, and this is a franchise where, like, the last 5 movies, you could make a solid argument for any of them about why that's the best of the franchise. There might be somebody that walks into this and goes, yeah, that was great, but the last 2 were better, or the last 3 were better, or that one stunt was much crazier than what this was. You might have some people that say that, and I don't think they're necessarily wrong. Now, I will say the only piece of that genuinely did affect my experience a little bit was their choice to market this film primarily on the stunts and the things that Tom Cruise was doing, to where the most mesmerizing parts of this movie, the parts that are supposed to be the standout sequences that we all walked out going, holy shit, that one scene, that one stunt, that one sequence, we all had it more or less shoved down our throat for the past year, maybe a year plus. To the point where I'm sitting in my IMAX theater last night waiting for the movie to start. The previews have now ended, and right before the movie goes, they do 2 back-to-back behind-the-scenes little sequences with Tom Cruise and Christopher McQuarrie talking about how they achieved the different action set pieces in this movie. And so essentially they show all the most kick-ass parts of the movie from a behind-the-scenes angle. And so even the ones that aren't the motorcycle leap that we all knew walking into this was going to be the big kick-ass part, the other action sequences, I kind of even knew those. I don't know if spoilers apply to action sequences, but I definitely wish I could have experienced those in the movie and not before the movie. But from my own personal experience, the one thing that got on my nerves a little bit, there are a number of sequences in here where a multitude of characters are just doing an exposition dump, and tends to be like philosophically talking about the implications of AI, and it was twofold, 2 different things that annoyed me. First of all was just how long and how philosophical the dialogue was, sometimes from characters where I'm like, I don't buy that they would quite talk that way. And the other thing was that they did this little device where you have 2 or 3 different characters that are like breaking up the same thought. So you'll have like 3 sentences of a thought that they're trying to clearly convey. And so this guy takes one part of the sentence, and then this person, they cut to them and they finish his sentence, and then this person finishes the thought. And it was just weird, because I'm like, people don't talk that way. Like, if one dude's talking, he finishes his thought, and then the next person goes. You don't like get together beforehand, like, okay, we're all gonna say this is my line, and then yours, and then you're gonna come home and finish it strong in the end. And the only other thing that I will say is that there were moments, not very many, but moments throughout the movie where the fact that they filmed this digitally, I think for the first time in this franchise, it felt a little too shiny and clean, to the point where in one sequence specifically, you could tell where the green screen was. You could tell that the actors were, hanging in front of a green screen, and everything beyond them in the background was digitally created. And it only stood out because everything else that was practically done in this movie looks so awesome. And so there's moments where you see the CGI, you see the digital side of the action, and it stands out a little bit. But all in all, guys, I loved this movie. It might be my favorite movie of the year. It's in solid competition with one other kick-ass action movie. I need to rewatch them both before the end of the year, and I declare which one is the victor. But regardless of who comes out on top, so far in 2023, my top 3 films of the year are all action films. So while horror is kind of taking a shit this year after the amazing year we had last year, action is on top, baby. If you're a fan of Mission Impossible or this new growing brand of Tom Cruise event films, I think the vast majority of people will be happy with this movie and will have solid arguments for the last 5 movies, including this one, about which one is the best of the franchise, because they're all so consistently fucking great. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, please click over here for all of my 2023 new release reviews so far. I'm also going to put the 31 on 31 Action Edition up here. You can see us rank Mission Impossible with John Wick, a bunch of other franchises, and of course, I'll re-rank the Mission Impossible films here in a couple of days, so like, share, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss that. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.